Focus. Ideate. Innovate. Enable. ICSI presents Company Secretaries, Enhancing Governance, Empowering Corporates, in association with CNBC TV 18.
Hello and very warm welcome to our special presentation. ICSI presents Company Secretaries, Enhancing Governance, Empowering Corporates. I'm Sonal Bhutra. Well, over the last few years, the role of company secretaries has evolved. Yet, at its heart, it remains the role of enabling effective governance through good administration of the board activities. And that is why company secretaries have always acted as the bridge across the hierarchy of an organization, its committees and its division of control with management. Joining me to deliberate more on the subject, we have with us Ashish Mohan, who is the Secretary ICSI, Naina Lal Kidwai, Chairman Admin Private Equity India Advisory Board, former President FICCI, GN Bajpai, who is the former Chairman of SEBI and former Chairman of LIC, and Anurag Pratap, who is the Vice President and Head CSR and Sustainability at Capgemini. Gentlemen and lady, thank you so much for joining us in discussing how to build boards in a better way, discuss ESG and a lot more on the show today. So it is a pleasure to have all of you with us and Mr. Pratap to have you with us in the studio today. But let me start with Ms. Kidwai, because there has been a lot of talks about building boards in a better way, and ESG is something which is playing an important role here as well. How are corporations, preparing towards complying with the ESG framework? What kind of new requirements are you seeing in this space, and what's really the update?
Sonal, this is all a very important and a very big question. I think the first thing which ESG is having to ensure is that the company's DNA is geared to ESG. Gone are the days where you looked at ESG under a CSR type of umbrella. So in ensuring that there is adequate stuff to report and correctly, the company needs to have embraced an ESG agenda. And I do think that many of our large corporates are well on the journey to that. However, in the reporting frameworks, these are evolving and these are not easy for companies to embrace. So we have our own India requirement, but many of these large listed corporates are indeed listed offshore or have large foreign investors. And some have begun to engage with, for example, the Dow Jones Sustainability Index or different methods for measurement and disclosure, which are important to foreign investors. And the challenge here is about evolving to a reporting framework which meets some of these foreign agendas, but also the requirements that we have locally. And while the two have attempted to be aligned, they are not completely aligned. So the framework for reporting, which comes under governance, which therefore falls to the company secretary's lot, or indeed to the finance director's lot, is still a challenge because of these complications. Some companies are, in fact, making their sustainability report part of the annual report. But those same companies have heard from some foreign investors, and I have evidence as to this, that they preferred independent and separate sustainability reports because those covered more detail. However, they understood that there were reporting requirements that were, in fact, very much part of the annual report. So even the way we report ESG and sustainability going forward is evolving because there are these requests coming from different quarters, not necessarily aligned in one space. And it's really going to be the role of the company, the finance director, the company secretary, through this engagement with the stakeholders and the investor community to develop that right level and type of reporting.
Yes, that's totally correct, and I do take your point, and we'll discuss this with our other guests as well. Mr. Pratap, you tell me, what is your take? What's happening with boards right now when it comes to involving ESG in our day-to-day matters, when it comes to reporting as well?
Now, what has happened in the last few years is that sustainability is no more a separate subject. It's becoming part of the business. And corporates have realized that you can be effective, your efficacy will go up a few notches if you bring in sustainability as main part of all the discourses that's happening there. That's the major change that's happened. Board is these days taking very active role in discussions around sustainability. they are taking this as seriously as they are taking any other topic. ESG is becoming part of the normal jargons and normal discussion material which is tabled these days in front of board to take calls on. And that's the reason why you'll find very valid, legit noises that board is making these days, asking relevant questions, making sure that these are becoming part of not just what is called a work that's happening in the CSR or sustainability domain, but this is becoming part of every business leader key performance portfolios. That's the major change that has happened in the last few years, and this is bringing in the kind of changes that one was always looking for, because you can't leave aside discussion on society separate, discussion on economics separate, governance separate, and then look at creating something which will give you what is called equal return to people, profit, planet. You need to bring all of them together to have, I'll say, the real kind of discussion and discourse on these topics. And that's what has happened in the last few years.
Okay.
Yeah.
So interesting. Yes, there has been a conversation and it is taking place across the boards as you are just telling us. Mr. Bajpai, let me come to you. We have spoken about this earlier and you were talking about how ESG, all three elements there are very important, but there are certain questions still to be answered. SEBI is taking a lot of steps right now. They spoke about it recently as to how ESG has to be a part of a broader framework. What is your take here versus earlier to now? What kind of changes have we seen and what kind of changes do we need to see in the board as well when it comes to the S of ESG, that is social, and G as well, that is governance?
See, the first is the fundamental change that is taking place. Even though it's very slow and it will take long time also to happen. And the fundamental change is that so far, treatment doctrine has been supreme, what is called shareholder primacy. Now, as against that, as from 2019, when the US CEO Business Roundtable accepted that a company belongs to other stakeholders also. And therein becomes the subject of taking not only the governance per se, with a benefit only to shareholders, but a governance of resources that the firm takes to create value, which belong to the society, which belong to the human resources, which belong to the suppliers of goods and services, and all have to be taken care of. And it is in this perspective that environment protection becomes very important. It is in this aspect, there's a social aspect, and which is fundamentally relates from the inequality. There is inequality at various aspects of it. And fortunately, there is an awakening that the companies no more belong only to shareholders. And that is where the board leadership is slowly taking place.
Okay, so I'll come back to you on this because there are important points raised by all three of you. But I have to come to you, Mr. Mohan, because you are going to be talking to us about the perspective from the company secretary's angle as well, because we have spoken about how boards have done adequately when it comes to ESG. What kind of a bridge do you think they can provide between the board and the stakeholders? Here we are talking about increasing the shareholders' value. We're talking about creating value as well. What kind of relationship can they create, that is the CS, to ensure that this relationship stays and also to ensure that there is some accretion of value for the shareholders and the stakeholders as well?
I think the word shareholder engagement or stakeholder engagement is stopped frequently now. Basically, as all of you know, basically the separation of ownership and control has been the focus of the entire legal and regulatory framework and also the corporate governance best practices, which has been evolved over the years globally so that the interest of the investors or the stakeholders are protected. Now here comes the company secretary's role. Company secretary is a multifaceted professional who can be sometimes playing the role of a statutory officer, sometimes plays the office of a coordinator, sometimes an administrative officer, and much more. Well, the role of a company secretary is not only to ensure that he provides effective governance principles to the board, but also he is the person to ensure that the proper governance, corporate governance process is being manifested in the organization. So here comes his role where he has to engage with a lot of stakeholders, particularly the investor community, the shareholders community. And it depends upon how he engages himself, ensuring the fairness and transparency.
So definitely giving out more information, talking more about ESG, changing reporting standards. That's the big takeaway from at least the first part of the discussion that we had. Ms. Kidwai, let me come to you, because we are talking about the E, the S, the G of the ESG standards that we are talking about, right? And one important thing is gender parity, so to say, but we are seeing a lot of disparity there as well. How important is the board's role here? And if you can tell us, what are the barriers to gender diversity that we are seeing right now? How is it different in law and in culture right now as we see?
So, gender disparity is clearly different in different industries. We still struggle in heavy industries to see the same ratios that you might find in the service sector. And there is merit to arguments which suggest that the pools that these companies fish in are smaller in terms of the female talent that is made available to them. But I would say that if the recruiting, the organization that goes out and recruits from, let's say, a pool of engineering colleges, if the ratio of men to women there is, let's say, 30% women, then we should at least see 30% women on that company's board. So yes, we can sensitize this to where, what the industry is and where the industry actually needs its talent pool.
Totally, point taken, and important points made there when it comes to pay parity and a lot more as well. I would like to just take a small break, but come back to this interesting discussion on the special episode. Stay tuned, we'll be right back.
ICSI presents Company Secretaries, Enhancing Governance, Empowering Corporates, in association with CNBC TV 18.
Welcome back. You are tuned into our special presentation. ICSI presents Company Secretaries, Enhancing Governance, Empowering Corporates, and we have our guest tuned into with us as well. Let me come across to you, Mr. Pratap, because we've been talking a lot about the S, that is the social of ESG, and CSR, that is corporate social responsibility, is a very important role, and you have been spearheading that for a long time. How are the disclosures here? Is it very important? Is it something that stakeholders really look forward to before they evaluate a company? And what is the effectiveness of audits, CSR audits that we have been seeing? How do you look at the entire framework?
CSR is becoming these days very important for a number of reasons. One is compliance, yes, because everyone is these days looking at how you're performing. Are you using the fund properly or not? Are you reaching out to right kind of people or not? Is your program really aligned with what CSR rules are talking about? That's one part of it. The second part is on the whole recruitment side. CSR is becoming a key differentiator for younger professionals to join a company. They look into the disclosures made by a company to understand what kind of company that is. Is it more humane? It's a company which is connected to the grassroots issues, company who is making the right kind of move at the societal level. Is it really concerned about the welfare of the largest society? And these are the issues and questions that is deciding whether I am going to join X company or Y company. That's another one. Third is giving you a huge amount of, for people who are working with you, a huge amount of pride. If they find that your company is creating impact at the society level, bringing the kind of transformation and change that they always wanted that company to bring in there. If I talk about the service industry or talk about my company in that particular sense, there's a huge amount of pride that one can see whenever people are talking about a place where I am working or place where they are working on the kind of issues that we have picked up or communities with whom we are working or the kind of transformation that we are bringing in. When we are, all of us are looking at why a girl is not getting the opportunity to join industry. There's a huge amount of a role that CSR can play in making sure that all those structural barriers which exist at the societal level for a girl to get into school, study hard, get into college, move into the employment spaces there, we are creating those options and opportunities for a girl to move in there. And that's what actual CSR is doing. So there's not just compliance, not just reporting, not just numbers, which are important for every one of us, but more than that, there is a huge amount of, I'll say, visibility that companies are making through their CSR, which is influencing their stakeholder, influencing their shareholders, influencing the people who wishes to join the company. They are acting as the key I'll say, a reason for someone to say, am I joining X or am I joining Y there?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so of course big change is taking place in the industry as well, and that's really heartening to know. Mr. Bajpai, you said that yes, there is adequate stuff being done when it comes to ESG, there's adequate done when it comes to changing the way board functions as well. But when you come to the governance part, do you think more needs to be done? Because we have seen a lot of instances where governance is not taken care of properly. Do we need more rules here? What kind of changes would you suggest?
No, first and foremost, Sonal, even if I have to modify my earlier understanding of my statement, it's not enough is being done. Board have started doing something. There is significant amount of work to be done. For example, even in the matter of CSR, it is being seen as a kind of service to society or charity. I would imagine that if society is a stakeholder of a firm, it is his right to ask for it. And these need to be aligned with the social goals the United Nations has done on 16. Having said that now let me tell you, the more important part is, right now I find, whereas the regulator has laid down adequate norms as well as the reporting requirements, not enough of real good work is being done. The focus is more on reporting than on delivering what is expected of the corporate to be delivering. And my, therefore, emphasis would be, for example, let's take like this. Today, when the entire report is made, it is made accountable, fundamentally geared to a reporting about what has been done to the shareholders. I would like, for example, the CSR being reported within that 16 goals of the United Nations, wherein their theme is that inequality must be. Everybody must be treated equally. And that is not only gender, not only the pay, but also how the environment and social infrastructure is made available to them. And that is how, in case if the board's leadership now fully taken over by the board and not remains with the management, then I would believe the substantive work will start happening.
Okay. Mr. Pratap has a point to make here. Please go ahead.
No, there are companies who are reporting these days on SDGs. All the 17 goals are getting what is called reviewed, and companies are making their disclosure based on what and how they are impacting on these 17 goals. So it's more than reporting, more than compliance. It's about the kind of change that the companies are making there. One will have to also acknowledge that very structured CSR responses have started happening in the last 8 years or so, or 7 years or so. And in these 7 years or so, there's a huge amount of maturity that I can see in this particular space. Companies have started, I'll say, a very authentic, ethical, integrity-based reporting, which is looking at those 17 goals that SDG is talking about. And they are in a very precise, in a very rigorous manner, those are getting, I'll say, explained for people to really acknowledge and appreciate the work that's happening in this particular space.
Okay, so there is some stuff happening for sure. There is some progress. Boards are taking that into consideration. But of course, more can be done here is what the point is. Mr. Mohan, let me come to you, because we are talking about sustainable development goals that most of the countries are following. We are talking about, achieving them as well. According to you and according to the institute or the company secretary committee, so to say, what do you mean by sustainable development here? And, what is the sustainable development of enterprises that this particular committee can bring to the fore?
Is sustainable development, if you purely see what do you mean by sustainable development is a way of development where the needs of the present are met without compromising the ability of the future generations. It is basically, we take care that the future generations, the requirements are also being taken care of. So it includes, sustainable includes and enables growth for all individuals associated and affected with the enterprise. So when we talk about sustainable enterprise as such, we refer to the businesses which are conducted with minimal negative impact on the or potentially a positive effect on the global environment, community, society, economy as such. The concept of ESG has already talked, that is environmental, social, and governance is evolving. And actually, it has now become a license for doing the business. So it reflects basically what impact of an organization has on a society and environment as a whole. So it is a broad area which covers, you can say, corporate governance, human rights, environment, customer issues, community issues, development, etc. So, but what we are seeing from the institute side, that when we all evaluate various companies during our various award recognition process also, we see that various companies have now started doing sustainability audit also, which actually has started these companies to find out those gaps. And this is a very, very welcome step for the country as a whole.
Oh, yes, it is. That takes me to the next question, because we are talking about compliance, but at the same time, we have to talk about ease of doing business as well. So this question is to Ms. Kidwai, Mr. Bajpai, and you, Mr. Pratap, as well. What do you think should be the kind of goals that we should set to ensure that there is resilient economic system that will take care of the compliance, but at the same time, there's ease of doing business, and also considers the things that we have spoken about as well, to take care of the environmental, social, and governance part of all the reporting and the standards in place as well. Ms. Kidwai, let me start with you.
So Sonal, I think you've heard excellent points from Mr. Bajpai, Mr. Pratap, Mr. Mohan on the CSR end. And I just want to add my voice to that, which will only re-endorse what you're asking. And that is that if you look at some of the CSR programs that the corporates are doing, and I believe they help in the ease of business in the long run, in terms of sustainable business in the long run. In areas that I work in water and sanitation, corporates are engaging with the communities around their factory. And they do this with a view to helping the community with its health indicators. Water, sanitation are key health indicators, because they draw from workers and HR resources from these communities. So if the community is healthy, the corporate benefits because the families from whom they hire are healthy. The worker doesn't have to stay at home looking after their family, and the worker himself or herself is healthy enough to report every day to work.
Yes, and that's something we'll discuss in greater detail, of course. But some interesting points there. Mr. Pratap, what do you have to say on this? Because there is a question of deadline as well, about corporates, trying to get more extension. But generally, how to bridge that balance here?
No, we are also human beings. And there is what is called, there's someone who said that we work more effectively, we find that deadlines are closer. But leaving all these things aside, there is a huge amount of rigor which is there at the corporate level to ensure that we are compliant with various rules which are there, part of our business. There are huge amount of rigor are also there to ensure that we have the social license to operate with the larger community there. And for the service industry, where unlike manufacturing, where you have a plant there, you have the neighboring communities there. For service industry, the community becomes wide and your coverage becomes very wider compared to the manufacturing industry.
Point taken. Mr. Bajpai, your closing comments about the question that I just posed. How do you think we can create this balance here?
Let me take your question head on rather than beating about the bush.
Yes.
See, the ease of doing business. Compliance with the regulation is not a problem because I've been there and I know. Their problem is two. One is, first and foremost, this regulatory predictability. How often do we change the rules? How often do we change the reporting requirements or the compliance standards? And the second is the multiplicity. The same compliances are being asked from various sources and various fronts and various regulators. Now, in case, if there can be a significant, which is started now, the regulators are coordinating. They are also trying to synchronize the requirements, but a lot more need to be done. And I don't think the corporates or the stakeholders have a real challenge in filing the information. They have a challenge is that the changes are being made too fast, too many.
So that's exactly the conversation we are trying to have, right? And we have received some really interesting comments and your take as well. Ms. Kidwai, Mr. Mohan, Mr. Bajpai and Mr. Pratap, it was a pleasure speaking with all of you. Some really great points, and I hope it brings about the real essence of this conversation that we just had. Thanks a lot for joining us, and thanks to our viewers as well for tuning in and staying with us on this special presentation. ICSI presents Company Secretaries Enhancing Governance, Empowering Corporates. Stay tuned.
ICSI presents Company Secretaries, Enhancing Governance, Empowering Corporates, in association with CNBC TV 18. Focus, ideate, innovate, enable.